Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1082 just came out, and Oda is continuing his insane streak of outside world chapters. I cannot believe that we are in a time in One Piece where I can actually expect that we're just going to keep getting to see characters like Dragon, like Shanks, like Garp, like Aokiji, like Blackbeard on the regular, instead of waiting God knows how many years for an arc to finally finish and us to get a glimpse of these guys that we really want to see more of. I mean, just this chapter we got Mihawk, Crocodile. I'd throw Buggy in there now as a character that I want to see more of regularly, and not even just for gag purposes. And then obviously the revolutionaries with Sabo, Dragon, and I'm sorry I'm laughing at this, but Ship Cutter T-Bone. I can't believe we're getting not really a cameo appearance, but a cameo, I suppose, reference made to him in a sort of not so insignificant way, in that he's kind of the poster child being used for Oda to present to us that, hey, Cross Guild is actually having a significant effect on the world at large. Also, we got a bit of a cameo from Sengoku here as well. Whether or not Sengoku actually ends up taking action on Hachinosu, I mean, now that's a believable possibility. At the point in the story that we're at, I would not be surprised if something like that happens. Maybe Sengoku's the final way that, you know, maybe Kobe and some of them are actually able to escape out of there, even if Garp maybe, I wouldn't say meets his demise, but possibly gets captured, something like that. But all of these things are just now officially on the table. We can see anybody. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to see a glimpse of a Kainu next chapter, with him finally giving some commentary on all of the events that are going on in the world. But let's just break down this chapter from the start. So, first of all, Cross Guild. For them to... Why T-Bone? That's what I thought initially. Why Ship Cutter T-Bone, who is without a doubt not only one of the nicest and purest Marines we have in the entire story, one of the purest characters that there exists in One Piece, period. You know, even outside of the Marine label, you can just compare him to anybody in the story. He is just a really good dude. I am shocked that Oda chose him of all characters to show the effect that Cross Guild is having, and how they're pushing the common man to basically try and actually off Marines to hand out bounties to basically get some money for themselves and their families in this situation. However, the more I thought about it, the more it sort of makes sense. Who's to say how much thought or how much meaning maybe I'm attaching a little more to it than is necessary? Maybe Oda just picked Ship Cutter T-Bone because he's a rather memorable character to remind us exists in the world and happened to get killed off. But I do think that it's possible that Oda chose a really good Marine that we actually like to be the victim of this, maybe to showcase just how bad things are in the outside world, in that it's been played up recently quite a bit, the importance of nations and islands paying the Celestial Gold, right? If you don't pay Celestial Gold, your island goes to ruin. The Marines basically kind of have this monopoly on security, and basically if you can't pay up, then they're not going to offer you security, and your entire family, everybody you know, your loved ones, relatives, etc., everybody on your island is basically done for, right? That's what happened to the islands that Whitebeard grew up on. That's what happened almost to Lucia Kingdom when they couldn't pay the Celestial Gold right before the Reverie. So I think the idea that even if I think using a character like T-Bone to show just how far pressed the average citizen is in these sort of islands that are bereft of proper marine security, that are suffering from famine, starvation, poverty, etc. The idea that, yeah, T-Bone's a good guy, but ultimately things are so bad out there in the world, and there's so much imbalance and inequality in the world, that even someone like him, of course, he can end up a victim to something like this, because it doesn't matter if you're a good guy. Ultimately, the system itself is flawed, and when the system itself is so flawed, the average citizen is going to look to do whatever is necessary to take care of themselves and their family. So I think that was actually a fairly good decision by Oda. I don't think it was an arbitrary one to just off T-Bone, who is a good guy. Initially, I was like, there's so many bad Marines that we could think of that could be the victim of this, but it makes sense to me in the long run. I would also add that I think that it's interesting the way they're phrasing how dangerous what Cross Guild is doing is, because it's honestly such a brilliant idea, because the Marines, they no longer can trust the common man, and that makes the idea of capturing Marines is so much more feasible than capturing criminals. Because if you're a pirate, if you're a criminal, you're going out and about in the world, and you're a bad guy. You're noted as a bad guy, right? People don't really get close to you. You don't get close to other people. You're a noted criminal, right? You already have this label walking around. If you're a Marine, you're supposed to trust the average person. The average person is supposed to trust you. You're technically on the same side, the side of the law. So it makes it infinitely easier to backstab a Marine than to capture a powerful pirate. Like the guy that took out Ship Cutter T-Bone, he doesn't look that strong. But when you're able to get this element of surprise that you wouldn't normally get around a pirate, right? A pirate's not going to let their guard down against average citizens when they know there's a bounty on their heads. But a Marine is a Marine, right? You're supposed to be protecting these guys. You have no idea who you're able to trust or not trust. Who under your protection might actually secretly be trying to off you. So the bounties that Cross Guild are putting out are ironically way more effective than any of the bounties that the Marines had been putting out on the past on pirates, just because it's so much easier to catch a Marine if you're a normal person than a pirate. It just makes sense. I think that Cross Guild as a concept has been one of my favorite, I guess, out of left field, wildcard, just additions to the story that I think none of us really saw coming, because we all kind of knew it was going to come down to the Straw Hat Pirates, the Blackbeard Pirates, and the Red-Haired Pirates at the end game. But to keep Cross Guild around and basically have them not only exist as one of the 4 significant pirate empires, but actually make them the ones that are the most trouble for the Marines at this point in time in the end game of the story. It's not the Blackbeard Pirates, it's not the Straw Hat Pirates, it's Cross Guild, this group that didn't exist not like 2 weeks ago. And then on top of that, actually pushing them to join in on the race in One Piece, it just makes the end game of the story so much more exciting when, even though we know, I've said this many times before, but even if we know the broad strokes of what's likely going to happen, the fact that we don't know so many details and so many major wrenches can be thrown in the works, that's what's going to make this final saga of One Piece so incredibly exciting from now till all the way till the end, I expect. Now, getting into the actual character stuff that we saw this chapter. I thought that this chapter for Buggy was basically low-key one of the best character moments we've had, I think, period, for any side character in One Piece, especially such a long-running one who'd been reduced to, I mean, not in a bad way, I think Buggy's a great gag character, but reduced to a gag character for the majority of his story time in the series of One Piece, right? To suddenly, kind of out of left field, actually dig in to who he is and what his motivation is, and stop treating him as just this bumbling dude that has accidentally stumbled his way all the way to this high position. I mean, he has, but he's still a person at his core, and he's not just a gag figurehead. What does he actually want? What does he think? How does he feel in the situation? It's time that he stops just getting pushed around and bossed around and stepped on and made fun of by, you know, these 2 bullies, Crocodile and Mihawk. Buggy's like, I've got some weight in this situation. We can actually do something here. It's so cool that Buggy's actually stepping up to Crocodile and Mihawk of all people. He knows what they're about to do to him, despite what he's about to push out into the open. But he's the one stepping up and saying, you 2 are thinking too small. That's the one great thing about Buggy, by the way. He has always thought big, right? And that is the most important thing, I suppose, to being a pirate, your sense of ambition, right? So he is stepping up and saying, you 2 are thinking too small. As strong as these 2 characters are, and as weak as I am, you're thinking too small. We can actually do something here. Don't you guys have that same dream that every other pirate has? Coming from Buggy, it just feels so powerful. This dude who's been stepped on, made fun of, crushed, turned into a joke over and over, had zero respect given towards him by anyone who actually matters in the story so far. Just the punching bag of the series for the last God knows how many arcs. For him, even him, to come forward and be like, guys, 1, I am a real person. I'm a human being! And for better or worse, I've made it this far in the story. I'm this close. I have it in me to push a little further. It's not just a joke anymore. That's what's so... I think what Oda just did with Buggy is one of the coolest things he's done with a side character in the story, period. And this is probably going to be Buggy's best moment in the story, because I do think that, you know, while a lot of people might be clamoring for, okay, let's get more of a Buggy arc, that'd be great. I do think what was most important was having some sort of plot reason to force Cross Guild into the race for One Piece, and Mihawk and Crocodile have no real reason to do so, so Oda probably wrote in this grand character moment for Buggy and dug into who he is and what he really wants, and gave him a moment of real boldness and ambition to push forcefully Cross Guild into the mix, so that huge necessary plot development has been sort of checked off. I don't know how important Buggy himself and his character will be going forward in the story in terms of actual character development going forward from here. I've seen some people saying, well, it's time he develops Conqueror's Haki. It's time that, you know, what if Buggy actually gets to One Piece before everybody? Look, anything's possible. Anything's possible. I didn't think Buggy would ever be a Yonko, but I would suggest people hold their horses or pull back a little bit on the expectations of how significant this is going to be for Buggy's character character going forward. Like Conqueror's Haki, I don't know about that. Like this, I think this in itself was quite a bit more than we could have ever asked for out of this particular character, especially just the way that it reframes how you look at him from the entire series, because we even got to go back to that flashback where initially all we got to see was, you know, Buggy getting angry at Shanks for, you know, having him like for petty stuff, right? For petty stuff, losing the map, all of that stuff, the fruit. It's just kind of absurd at that point in time where like Buggy's he's a pathetic individual, right? It felt to me like there was no real bond between Buggy and Shanks just because of the way that Buggy talked about and viewed Shanks from what we'd seen so far. But I thought that Shanks did care about Buggy, but I thought that maybe Buggy didn't actually care about Shanks. But now we get the gaps filled in. What's the real reason that Buggy left Shanks? Of course, Buggy at some point must have realized the potential that Shanks had. The fact that he was aware of it and wasn't actually just so, you know, ludicrously gassing himself up to the point that he thought that, you know, me and Shanks, you know, we're basically the same or whatever. I actually look down on Shanks as a pirate and stuff like that. No, the reality is that Buggy, even at a young age, he did at his core realize how great Shanks was. He wanted to serve Shanks and push Shanks to Pirate King. Buggy was, it actually makes my heart, like, it does my heart good to think that that bond, like that character dynamic, which has been portrayed as so one-sided in terms of Shanks being nice to Buggy, but Buggy hating Shanks, the confirmation that at their core, Buggy definitely did care about Shanks, and the true betrayal was not the stuff with the fruit or the map or anything like that. The true betrayal was Shanks actually letting Buggy down in terms of what Buggy thought Shanks could be, and the pedestal that Buggy put Shanks on. Of course, Buggy doesn't have the full context, so we're going to set him aside for a second and just talk about the fact that I think this chapter gave us a good new perspective on Shanks. I think it confirmed a few things that a lot of us had already believed about him, which was we thought that Shanks was choosing not to go after One Piece, not to go after Laughdale for some reason. It seemed like he had no interest in Pirate King. So it seems as though before this, initially Shanks definitely did, because Buggy had that impression, and Shanks pretty much confirmed that to Buggy when they were kids. But Shanks said that something has changed his mind. He says, I'm not ready to go after that yet. What does that mean? Well, I think that what changed, and the one thing that is being hidden from the reader in Shanks' story, is what Roger told him, right? So with this new bit of information, I think so much clicks. We already all got the sense that Shanks has been pushing off the idea of being Pirate King. He's never talked about himself in that way. It's always been Luffy. He gave Luffy the hat, right? He went from Roger to Shanks, went from Shanks to Luffy. Shanks is not he's not the one that's saying, I'm going to carry the torch for Roger. I'm finding the person to give the torch to. Every time Shanks has talked about Luffy, I bet my arm on the New Age. Luffy represents the New Age, right? I'm waiting on Luffy. He's always had Luffy in mind. So whatever with all of this, it kind of makes sense. At one point, Shanks was interested in Laughdale. Roger says something to him that we don't get to see. Shanks then tells Buggy he's no longer interested in that. The phrasing is, I'm not ready yet, which implies that he is going to go after it one day, but that's curious because everything we see of him afterwards seems to suggest he has zero interest in One Piece. He never makes a move towards it. As far as we know, he doesn't even have one of the road poneglyphs. He caught some from Kid, but initially he didn't have any. And he keeps pushing Luffy forward. He gives Luffy the hat. He's trying to guide Luffy out to sea. He's waiting on Luffy. He's talking about how he bet his arm on the New Age. He's referring to Luffy as the New Age. He always refers to Luffy as basically what's coming next. So whatever Roger told him most likely made Shanks realize that he could not, for some reason, be the guy that could be the next Pirate King, the guy that could fulfill the will of D, whatever needs to be fulfilled. That really puts everything that we kind of assumed about Shanks into perspective and almost borderline confirms it. Obviously, it's still just speculation so far, but I think everything really falls into place with this. And the idea that now, why is it now that Shanks is going after One Piece? Well, if you want to be obtuse, you could say, well, Shanks was a coward and he waited till Kaido and Big Mom went down, and now he's going after One Piece. That's ridiculous. Shanks has literally never ran from a fight in the entire story. He walked onto Whitebeard's ship solo, fully ready for a Yonko to go full force trying to attack him. He rolled up on Kaido and stopped him from going to Marineford. Shanks has never been afraid of, I think, any character in the entire story. I think it's fairly obvious based on pretty much everything that Shanks has said throughout One Piece, from the beginning, like chapter 1, all the way till now, and with the added context we got, that Shanks did not go after the One Piece until Luffy was ready to go after the One Piece. That's what Shanks was really waiting on. Once Luffy was ready to go after the One Piece, once Luffy was Yonko level, one step away from Pirate King, now is the moment that Shanks thinks, I'm ready to go for it too. Why? I would still assume to test Luffy in some way, to be some sort of final gatekeeper, some sort of final barometer or something like that to see whether or not Luffy is truly ready. But it can't be a coincidence that now of all times, when Shanks has clearly been strong enough, very arguably the strongest pirate, you know, the strongest among the Yonko at least, for the last, I don't know, however many years since Whitebeard declined, only now does Shanks want to go after the One Piece once Luffy is ready. With the added context from what Buggy, you know, what we learned from him in his flashback, I think it all does seem to start to make sense. So we got tremendous amount of, you know, context for Buggy, much more depth added to his character. He became, honestly, in my opinion, a great character after this moment, not just in a gag way, but a legitimately great character in One Piece. And with Shanks, I think a lot of his motivations have become 98-99% confirmed. We still need a little bit more just factual, definitive confirmation, but it seems like almost nothing else, you know, fits his motivations at this point then. Pretty much the last bit of info that we got, that he has changed his mind, most likely since Roger told him something related to him not being the one for One Piece. So, all of that being said, the last bit we got to talk about is Dragon and Sabo. I'm gonna say this. I am still a little bit upset about the Dragon scene where he read in the newspaper, Dragon reads in a newspaper that Sabo attacked Cobra, and then Dragon got very angry about it. I never thought that there would be anything that could really fix that scene because it's just so absurd. Because at this point in the story, like, you're the Revolutionary Army leader, dude. Like, you read a newspaper. How many newspaper stories go out every day condemning the Revolutionary Army and making up some stuff about what they did in this country or that country? I mean, this is just baby stuff 101. I mean, from the very first couple arcs or whatever, the Straw Hats were getting used to the idea that the newspapers were just gonna lie about a bunch of stuff that they did. That's just been the entire story of One Piece so far. I don't know if there's a single character in One Piece that's even like semi-notable that believes anything, that believes all of the lies that are made up in the news. I mean, you even have Luffy outright explaining to Caribou back in Udon prison, oh, you actually believe those rumors about Kid's reputation? Those are obviously not true. And Kid comes in and confirms, yeah, blah blah blah, this isn't what happened, etc. I thought pretty much everyone would know this. I mean, even if Dragon's dumb son Luffy knows not to believe everything that you just hear, how can the Revolutionary Army leader react so negatively to some newspaper headline saying that his chief of staff committed murder? It's just so bizarre. I mean, I'm sorry I'm going off on this tangent, but I was really hoping that this would somehow be addressed in their first meeting. Maybe something could be done, because it's just such a weird, out of character, just nonsensical reaction to have that really makes you think that Dragon doesn't know anything about anything. Like, he sends all of his revolutionary commanders in on a raid, and then he has no sort of follow-up to really touch base and fully understand what happened there. And he reads one thing in the newspaper and just assumes the worst and is like, wow, I guess these guys I sent in there were really bad people. I can't believe Sabo might have, he killed King Cobra. He definitely killed King Cobra unless he has some really good excuse. It's kind of absurd. So I was hoping that would be addressed here. It was not. At all. Whatever. I'm just gonna chalk it up as basically the worst Dragon moment that we will ever get in the story, and one of the worst, I guess, character moments, period, in One Piece, out of characters that we have any sort of basic standards in terms of trust and faith in their friends, etc. basically. We're just gonna write that off. That aside, Lucia Kingdom, lots of members of Lucia Kingdom are alive and well. Keep in mind, when Lucia Kingdom was being destroyed, from what we saw, there were people clearly on the island. So, what exactly happened there? Why do we have a bunch of people on the ship? I think that needs to be explained a little bit. I'm sure we'll get that out of Sabo's explanation. Maybe at the end of the day, Oda just wanted to save Moda and some members of the Lucia Kingdom. Maybe more members are alive. We'll find out. I'm very, very excited. I'm really hoping that next chapter Oda does not cut away. I really hope he does not cut away, because this is really what we've been waiting on. What happened at Marijua? What happened at the Reverie? What happened at the Reverie? That is, I think it's been such a huge question in One Piece for such a long time, but it seemed almost too good to be true for us to ever really get a clear flashback to find out the details of it, but it seems like we're about to, so I'm really looking forward to next chapter. And if you enjoyed this, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you all next week.